ki te uru kararanganga hau, ki te tonga, kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. Whakapuke ngā ngari o te roto i te ko ngā pōtiki a hina hopu, heru mai rā ki te mātara i ore hu. Whano, hara mai te toki, hau me hui e. Tēnā tātou. Koutou, kua tai mai ki tawhiti, nau mai hara mai ara. Ngāti whakaue anō hoki tēnei e tuake nei. Ngāti tono hopu tēnei e tuake nei. Ngāti piki au tēnei e tuake nei. Ara, tēnei waha tōku, no te tai rāwhiti whānau apanui, te whakatohia tēnei e tuake nei. Tēnei, te mihi atu nei kia koutou. Tēnā koutou, kia ora tātou, katoa. So I've been invited here today to share a little bit about maramataka. And when I'm invited to a Wananga to talk about maramataka, that's such an open question because I can basically talk about anything from the rangi to the whenua to the moana, anything. But I'll try and keep everything as close to hauora, because that's the kaupapa. O hoi anō. Hea tēnei mea te maramataka. What is maramataka? First of all, it's a form of mātauranga Maori. And what is mātauranga Maori? It's pretty much a way in which we see a way in which we choose to see the world. Paora te huranga nui said that in my wānanga last year in Te Heke Ngāro. Basically a way in which you choose to see the world. And that's how we saw the world for what it was, that everything is connected. Tuia ki te rangi, tuia ki te moana, tuia ki te whenua, tuia ki te herenga tangata, karongo te pō, karongo te ao. Everything in the sky is connected to everything in the moana. Everything in the moana is connected to everything on the whenua. It's also connected to us. E rongo te pō, e rongo te ao. Karongo te pō, karongo te ao. What does that mean? Basically means polarity or duality, night, day. Things that can't exist without the other. Night, day, tapu, noa, wahine, tāne, te ora, te mate, e rā mea katoa. Another whakatauki. Kore kau he mea I hangatia, kore kau he mea I hangatia, I ahu noa rānei, kia noho wehi tēnei iau. Nothing in this world is meant to live in isolation. Ahakoa matangaro, ka kitea te Māori. And that's a whakatau aki from Tūkaki Waititi of te whānau wāpani. Ahakoa matangaro, ka kitea te Māori. Just because there are many things that we can't see, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Because you can see its Māori and how it impacts something else. An example of what a matangaro is, ko te hau. Wind is a matangaro, you can't see the wind, but you can see, we know it exists because you can see how it impacts ngā rākau, you can feel it on our skin. Energy, tō ngāo, he matangaro. There's also another term which is matahuna. A matahuna is something that you can't see, but we also know that it exists. But if we tamper with it, kia tūpato. Tapu, he matahuna. Electricity, he matahuna. And we know that electricity exists because the lights are on. First of all, kia hoki ki ngā kōrero Uncle Fred. E hara tēnei, I'm not a tohunga, but I know tohunga and I'm connected to tohunga. I'm not a hunter-gatherer. And my brother was here. Kuare katoa tēnei. I'm not a hunter or gatherer, but I'm connected to them. And through my journey and through my hiding in this space in maramataka, people started coming to me and asking me all sorts of questions that I had no idea, no clue what the answer was to those questions, but I knew how to find them. I knew which tohunga, in particular tohunga, to ask. I te mea I ngā kaunui tēnei ki te kaupapa, I remembered a whole lot of mātauranga. and I started banking a whole lot of mātauranga. So if I'm not a tohunga, if I'm not a hunter, what am I? Ka reo mohu. But engari e ngā kaunui e ki tēnei kaupapa. Ngā kaunui ki tēnei kaupapa. One thing that I want to emphasize, I'm going to have a bit of a kōrero in here and give some 101 maramataka mātauranga, but the real presentation is out there, kei wahora. Kei wahora, and I actually want to go outside afterwards. But one thing I want to stress and emphasize is the importance of observation. The importance of observation. Mātauranga Māori, maramataka doesn't go anywhere. It's all good to know what phases we're in, marama phases we're in. It's all good to know that. But how do you know? But how do you know? Please don't tell me that you looked at an ep. Please don't tell me that you looked at a rauemi. Because it's supposed to be knowing what phases we're in through observation. Tēnei mea te tiro. Koera te mea. And the Hawaiians call it kilo. Iwi, here in Aotearoa, Iwi had a tiro whetū. Here in Aotearoa we have an aorangi, we have a tiro whetū, we have a titoko o te rangi, known as tokorangi pā. We have tuahu o te atua. Those particular places, if you were to explain what those places are from Pākehā terms, we'll call them observatories, we'll call them star domes, but those were exactly that. Those are those places to observe our taiao, te rangi, te whenua, te moana. And it was so important for tohunga to understand the rhythms of te rere o te rangi, ngā tai o te moana, me te nuku o te whenua. Why? Because their survival was dependent on it. And the way it still is, we're kidding ourselves if we think we're outside of that. Ki te māwiwi tō tātou taiao, ka māwiwi hoki tātou. Maramataka is underpinned by our beliefs, our values, and it has a direct connection to our identity. For example, the environmental factors from here. Mehe mea ko no ngā tipiki au koe, you have an intricate connection to kākahi. Ngā kākahi whakairoiro a hine hopuru. Ngā tironga mai, intricate connection to ngā kapakapuai. Of course, our whānau here explode like our geysers. But tūhoi, mehe mea no tūhoi, he whakapapa tō tika koe kia hine pū kohurangi. If you're from Kahungunu, you have he pihau pāua koe. There are environmental factors that feed into your whakapapa. And koera te oranga nui o tātou te tangata Māori. And it's the same for all, with all the iwi, with all indigenous cultures around the world. Ko te raru nui te neira, i neira, the biggest problem now is that we've Rangi Mātāmua, she talks about this. When you impose your timekeeping system on someone else, which is what happened to us, it completely changes the way we interact with our taiao. Completely. All of us, kua colonise katoa tātou katoa. But hoi anō, māku I tēnei pō hei āwhina. So, kia whakaaro ai koe kia hoki ai koe ki tō tātou ao, ki te ao o tā tātou tupuna. Kia mōhio ai koe. Ngā pātaka kōrero o Aotearoa website. Just go to, just bring that, blow me up. This thing here is probably the least important raumi that's in there. It's basically to help align or set dates or find what date you're in. That's it. That's it. This is the most least important raumi of all the raumi that are in there. But hoi anō, you've got the lunar phases on the left here, but you've got your months on the top here. Some of you may be familiar with rangi mātāmua's tahi o pipiri, te rua o takurua, toru here o pipiri. So all those phases, they're all stars, but they're also descriptions of the types of activity our tupuna were doing at that particular time. Ka pai? So for example, pipiri. Me piri, we knew there was the time to come together. Hongongoi or honohonoi, so these names come from Uncle Irirangi Tikiawa no Ngāti Pikiao. Honohonoi or hongongoi is basically whakawhanaungatanga or Wananga time. So you can connect to that person, make more babies, all those types of things. Honohonoi. Here turi koka. Now, for example, that was the time to turn the soil. Here to connect or to start turning the soil. Turi, your knees. Koka, that's a Ngāti name for mother, but basically that's the time to start turning the soil before you plant. So you get more planters beginning of that season during that springtime. But basically there's no connection to what was no separation from what was happening in the sky to what was happening on the whenua to what we were doing. Other examples, I have roughly 600 different names for winds, ngā hau. And I got all these names from Rereata Mākiha, and I'll just share some examples. Haungenge. Haungenge is the type of wind that couldn't shift the waka as if you're out on the moana. Haungenge. Haupu kirikiri, aggressive wind. Haututu. If you're observing, how do you know what's a haututu? But just looking at the leaves or our taiao that are blowing along on the ground disorderly, all over the place. That's what haututu. So our tupuna from ki tā te Māori titiro, that's a similar behaviour to our children. So they took haututu from that and put it into our tamariki. Ko te mātauranga Māori tērā. Because we saw no separation or no, there was no silo in our thinking and everything that we did, everything that we do. Maramataka doesn't work. Doesn't work if you're not taking observations. And if you're taking observation, ka rongo koe I ngā tohu o ngā atua. Ne. That's what maramataka is. Our atua Māori, it's basically showing us what to do, when to do, all the time. Our group Ngā Pātaka Kōrero has wānanga on that very kupu, rongo. What is rongo? What is that kupu? What does it mean to us? I don't think you were there, yeah. We had a wānanga on that very kupu, rongo. What is that? Rongo is basically all your senses. What you see, what you smell, what you taste, how you feel. Taking observations of all those senses, and then connecting them back with our taiao. Okay, so that's basically this is the main observation tool to prompt you into taking those observations. Okay. Me hoki au ki te whānau maram. And Nangi Mātauranga shares this whakapapa all the time. Ka moi a tongo kia wainui. And these are atua that existed long before Rangi Nui and Papatuanuku. Tuatahi and these are what Rangi Mātauranga refers to as te whānau marama and the astronomical bodies of time. Ka moi tongo kia wainui. First, ka pita ko tamanui te rā. Second, hine marama. Third, ngā whetū. Tua whā ko hina atori. And I'm just going to start talking about the different phases of the sun, because it's not just the moon, but it's about the sun, the moon, the stars, and all, a lot of, the wind, the tides, everything. Ngā tohu, but we'll start mai te rangi. Tamanui te rā. So, in the morning, there's this term in our tikina atu te wai ata rongonui o te piki kōtuku o Ngāti Rongomai, te ata mahina. What is te ata mahina? How do you know if you're in te ata mahina? Ngāwari, before daylight, before the sun rises, before the sun rises and the moon is up, that is te ata mahina. When the moon is not there, that's te ata pō. Simple, ne? That's how you know that when you're in te ata mahina. After that, before sunrise, you're going to, so get rid of the Gregorian calendar. Stop thinking stop thinking 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. I'm giving you the proper times. Te ata hāpara, it's when our manu start chirping, start singing. Ngā manu o te ata, tākiri mai te ata ko ori hite manu. After te ata hāpara is te whitinga o te rā, o te ao, o te ata tū. Sunrise. After sunrise is te awatea. Ka pō, ka ao, ka awatea. Tihe mauri o. Awatea. After awatea is te ata. We all know what te ata is, the morning. Te ata goes into te paupautanga o te rā. When you're facing north and the sun gets to its halfway point. After te paupautanga o te rā is te ahiahi, afternoon. Okay, there are many terms and different names from various areas. I'm just giving you this one version. After te ahiahi is te rehurehutanga o te rā. That's when the sky starts changing colour before sunset. After te rehurehutanga o te rā is te tonga o te rā, sunset. After te tonga o te rā is te pō. And after te pō, you go to Wainganui pō. Wainganui pō, te ata mahina o te ata mahina o te ata pō. Marama. But it's all through observations if you're just following those, following the sun and the movement of the sun. My partner, every day, most days she's taking learning the different phases, one day by day, always asking me, what's that? I said, are we in the ahiahi? Or the thing. But that's how you got to do it. That's how you have to do it. Day by day, by day, by day, by day. That's how you got to do it. Back to the whakapapa tamanui te rā, tuarua ko hine marama. I'm just going to teach you fellas the phases real quick. Pēnei tātou katoa. And I'm not going to go, we'll be in there all night if I'm going to talk about Evie Phase and break it down to the outside, blah, blah, blah. But I'm going to teach you real quick. Pēnei taku. Kōrero mai, whirowhiti. Another Evie, there's all whiro, there's different variants, there's heaps of whakapapa. But Aotearoa is whiro, motu whenua is whiro. Yeah. Whirowhiti. Hapai, left hand up like this. That's the quarter moon. Tamatea, kōrero mai. Tamatea. Every has a tamatea, no matter what name, different names we have. Tamatea, tamatea tuatahi, tamatea angana, tamatea whakapau, and other iwi have their names, other names, but every iwi has a tamatea phase. So and it's always the first quarter moon. So, whirowhiti, tamatea. After tamatea, put your hand like this. Rākau nui. O turu turu, o turu, rākau nui, rākau mātohi, te o rākau nui. All the full moons. Start again. Whirowhiti. Tamatea. Rākau nui. Right hand. And that's the last quarter. We're in it now. Tangoroa. So that's the first main quarters. No, I'm going to teach you a couple of more. So we can go around. Easy. So everyone put their left hand by their left hip. I'm going to use o wenuku. Kore mai, o wenuku. Hapai, o wenuku. That's the crescent moon, starting with the crescent moon. Left hand by your left ear. Kore mai, Maori. Maori, Atua, all of those names, they're all the same. You're just going. So, back down here. O wenuku. Maori. Okay, right hand by your right ear. Kore kore. That's the waning maramai. Kore kore. Right hand by your right hip. Rongo. O rongo nui, o rongo Maori, he o rite. Okay, let's go around. Marama. Whirowhiti. O wenuku. Tamatea. Beautiful, sharp over here. Maori, yeah. Rākau nui. Kore kore. Tangoroa. Rongo. Whirowhiti. Too sharp, alright, too sharp. Okay, now I'm going to throw a spanner in the works. Alright, when I say, I'm going to give you one kupu that describes that particular phase. When I say whirowhiti, you say reset. Because that's what you should be doing at that time, resetting yourself. And it's the start or the first phase of our maramataka, our month, the start of our month here in Aotearoa. So, whirowhiti, you say reset. Whirowhiti. Too sharp, all right? When I say o wenuku, you say growth. O wenuku. To whirowhiti. O wenuku. Too sharp, all right? Left hand up. When I say tamatea, you say unpredictable. Tamatea. The weather is unpredictable, people are unpredictable. It has whakapapa to tāwhiri mātea, ruaumoko, waiho tērā kōrero, but that's what it's those things that make it unpredictable. Okay? If you don't believe me, start observing. But if you're following, you will see. Ka rongo koe I ngā tohu. Hapai, whirowhiti, reset. O wenuku, tamatea. Hapai, Maori, abundance. Hapai, Maori, really good for planting kumara. If you want it to grow big. Yeah. Maori, hapai, we'll go up. Whirowhiti. O wenuku, tamatea, Maori, rākau nui, amplified. Rākau nui, yeah, ngā mea katoa e. Ngā hiki nā te ngāo i tērā wā. Even the Pākehā know this. Yeah. But I was having a discussion with one of my uncles this morning who was an ex-police officer. Even they know the amount of call-outs, unfortunately, that happen during the full moon. And koenei ngā huatanga. And you'll see the obvious difference by taking observations of the rangi, the whenua, and including our people. I'm a former worker employee for Aotearoa whānau ora, based on Haupapa Street. Right in the middle of town, offices right all around, across the road from probations. Just by taking an observation every day outside the streets, you can tell the obvious difference between whiro and ngā kaunui. Look down the street on ngā kaunui, traffic, heaps of traffic up and down, heaps of people. Go there, look out down the street on feudal, it's the opposite. Quiet. Down. Oh, rākaunu also, I mentioned probations, arguments happening outside there and what's going on. But koenei ngā tohu. If you open your eyes, tō wairua, ngā mea katoa, in order to take those observations. Where are we? Rākaunu. Right hand by, rākaunu. Apai, I don't see many hands. Rākaunu. Right hand by your right ear. When I say kore kore, you say release. Kore kore. Release. Apai. Kore te takirau oike down into the kore kore phase has a connection. So before that phase is rākau matuhi. And it's telling us, the kore that I know is that takirau oike at times is the time, the optimal time to do tohi. So that is the name rākau matuhi. Tohi is a type of karakia for our tamariki, but also and pure as well. Karakia to whakawātea. So that's the kupu that I'm going to describe for this time. So as you're waning, whakawātea. Release. Kore kore. Whatever that may look like traditionally, so karakia, pure, tohi, or there are many ways you can release now these days. Unfollow friends on Facebook, that's releasing. So kore kore, release. Tangoroa, productive, we're in that time now. Tangoroa. Well, a full house, thanks whānau ora. No. Tangoroa, productive. Last one, rongo, balance. Rongo. So rongo was our time where our tupuna would harvest rongoa, use rongoa, and there's a connection to rongo, the atua, rongo. Yeah. So talking about our atua from and how our tupuna saw our atua Māori, our taiao, we need to start changing our narrative and stop saying Tangoroa is the atua of the sea. Kyle, he is the sea. Ranginui is not the atua of the sky, he is the sky. Tāne is not the atua of the forest, he is the forest. Mena ka pera o whakaaro, and you'll start seeing that a lot of our pūrākau that we grew up with were metaphors for us to understand our taiao and connect to our taiao. Our pūrākau are crucial to mātauranga Māori. They say they survive, our pūrākau survived colonisation because we fed them to our tamariki. And there's a whakatauaki, it's a Pākehā one, but come from the Native American Indians. Tell me the facts and I'll learn. Show me the facts and the truth and I'll understand. But tell me the story and I'll remember it forever in my heart. Tukaki, Taika Waititi, Indigenous people, we are the original storytellers, which is so true. And if you do your own research and when you're learning about these atua Māori, when they mention tāne, they're talking about tāne. Here Tangoroa, they're talking about Tangoroa. Hands up if you know the story, a version of the story, Te Orokohanga o Te Ao, which is the creation story, separation of Ranginui and Papatūānuku. Hands up. Hands up if you know the Big Bang Theory. Hands up if you know the difference. There is none. Just two different worldviews. Two different worldviews. Western worldview is pretty, rigid. And you'll learn this through the other Wananga happening through the series. Mātauranga Māori worldview, holistic. Western worldview in terms regarding time, past, present, future, and it's embedded in the English language. Every time we talk and have discussions with each other, we're always referring to the past, we're always referring to the present, we're always referring to the future. That's how we talk. That's not how time isn't linear to tātou te tangata Māori. It's circular. and repetitive. That's why I have to say is that maramataka is the repeating cycles. O te rere o te rangi, ngā tai o te moana, me te nuku o te whenua. Tuia ki te rangi, tuia ki te moana, tuia ki te whenua, tuia ki te herenga tangata i rongo te pō, i rongo te ao. Anyway, whānau, this is not my presentation. My real presentation is at our tai ao, is outside. Yeah, right on cue. Half 6 Gregorian time. Can we please all just make our way out in front of Tinopu where it's open, and let's do a bit of stargazing, because that is maramataka. Ka pai? Ko tēnei, all this long, the Milky Way over here, e known as the Milky Way, is he maha ngā ingoa, te mangoroa, te ikaroa. This is our kei reira, wā tātou supuna katoa. So if you look at tautoru over here, you can always find te mangoroa behind, because te mangoroa follows tautoru. Because te mangoroa ko tērā te taurapa o te waka, a rangi. Yeah. As rangi mātāmua has been explained, if you've been following rangi mātāmua, and te waka o rangi, or te waka o taramainuku, the back of the waka is the pots, known as I've described it, the pots or tautoru, and behind it follows, behind, always following the pot is te mangoroa. And that's why you see our waka has the taura behind it, to replicate that. Okay, everybody looking to the east. One of the prominent atua within all of Māoridom, as well as all around the Pacific, is rehua. Known in other areas, lehua. Ko tātou Aotearoa, ko rehua ariki. On either side, 2 of his wives, many wives, but on both sides is ruhi and peke hāwini. Ruhi, rawa ko peke hāwini. Okay, can anybody see where my laser's going, including all of these stars? Known as Scorpius, or if you've seen the movie, yeah. Kei te rongo. Kei te rongo ngā atua ki aku kōrero. Kawa, a rehua ariki. Ki aku kōrero. Known as the Pacific, so our Hawaiians and kanaka Māori o Hawaii, this is te mataua Maui, and you'll be familiar with the Maui movie. It's Maui's hook. See, there's the top of the hook going around, and it's the tip here. Okay. Of course, it's rising sideways, but if you're in the north, looking this way, it's facing downwards, and it looks like it's fishing up our Aotearoa and many of the other islands, because it's facing straight up. But for us, it's sideways. He maha ngā kōrero e pāna ki tēnei constellation, depending on which iwi you come from. So that story I gave you about Maui, about Tamarereti, here's another waka here. This is his waka, te waka Tamarereti, or Puna, mate, te Puna o te ora, I think it's te Puna o te ora, something like that. But that's his waka here. See, there's the back, the taurapa, and there's the tauihu. They see a waka, mā tātua tūhoe. Engari kia tātou Aotearoa. Of course, te ara we have our own versions of everything. He whare. If you can see the top, and this is the whare down here. Ka pā tatu atu au ki te whare o rehua ariki, te whare pūkenga i te rangi, ara. Te whare pūkenga i te rangi, te pūtahitanga o rehua, ara. Ka moi a rehua, kia Matariki, on that side. Ka puta ko tū whakamono ariki, ka puta ko tūterangi ani waniwa, ko te tāu hukorongo maiwhiti. Ko te pau kaiapa, ko ngā tō ruerangi, te ariki horei o te Aotearoa. This is what we, as Te Aotearoa, saw this as a whare. All mātauranga, all knowledge comes from this whare. I've known this for about 3 years, roughly, and it took me, I've held it, but ko he tērā whakaaro ki aune. It's time to start sharing our kōrero to our uri. Tātou katoa, Te Aotearoa. That's all we see he whare. Right, when this constellation rises and sets, the story changes, and it's the same with Tuhoe as well. So it rises sideways like that, and when it sets, it turns. So when it sets, it turns on. The waka Tuhoe, they change, and it becomes it turns from te waka tamariri to te waka mairerangi. So te waka tamariri is a waka for rangatira. Te waka mairerangi is a waka for commoners like myself, for others to go on. So te waka katoa. Whare, but from what I know, this once it gets to the west, it turns and it changes its shape. It comes back to te mataua Maui, because we knew the Maui stories as well. But the waka, this is the hook, so this becomes the top, this becomes the bottom, and as it's setting on the west, it's pulling the sun up on from the east. Okay? Yeah, if you're up in the morning, look to the west, you'll see that it's facing straight up and it's pulling the sun up on the east. And you get the birds chirping in the morning. Mea katoa. Ki tā te tangata kanaka Māori o Hawaii, how did Maui wake up the sun? Is that he sent a out, a chicken out to wake up the sun. And if you look on the movie, there's hey on there. That's how we think, the roosters and the chickens. And if you have roosters or chickens at your house, then they usually go off in the morning. He maha ngā whetū o te rangi, tohu ana I te rangi. So back to this side. So, because these sides, so we've got tautoru over here. I can't see it because of the light, but tautoru over here. I think this is whakahurangi over here. So when when tautoru and Matariki rise in the morning, you know you're in winter, eh? You're in winter. When these two stars here, whakahurangi, whakahunuku rise in the morning, spring. Rehua ariki, when rehua ariki is rising in the morning on te ata hapara, summer. What's rising in the morning at the moment, we have parearo, ranga whenua. They're not up obviously because it's night time. They're not up yet. Those are the stars that indicate this time of the year, which is autumn and the harvesting season. So when you get Saturn, which is parearo, tipare, parearo, rising in the morning, whānui rising in the morning, matawhero, Mars rising in the morning, ranga whenua, Jupiter rising in the morning, you're in autumn. Roughly every 4 minutes between each day is roughly when the star, that's the difference between each day, when the stars are rising from the east and setting on the west, or rising from the east. So if it rises at 6 o'clock in the morning on one day, the next day it's 4 minutes past 6, then 4 minutes later, then 4 minutes later, 4 minutes later. The marama is roughly 45 to 50 minutes later. Yeah, it's a measure of time and measuring our astronomical bodies of time. Yeah. Our navigators would often use mahutonga and atutahi as finding due south. So if you're standing where you're standing, stand with your feet shoulder width apart. Put your right hand on atutahi, left hand on the bottom of mahutonga. Clap your hands, drop them in between your feet. That is due south. Then if you can find east, north, south, yeah, give much. Yeah, give much of. Because we're in Rotorua, it's quite easy to find north, south, east, west, but if you're out on the moana, it's a lot harder. That's one way of finding east. I think kua rahi tēnei mo me te rāua. Do we have any pātai? Our marama that I was talking about inside, another way of identifying what phases you're in by timing them with the rising of the sun or the setting of the sun. So at the moment on sunrise, the marama is straight up in the morning on Te Atamahina. That's how I know I'm in Tangaroa. Opposite, if the moon is already up, if the moon's up here on the Popoutanga, so if the moon's up here on the Popoutanga and the sun is setting, that is the opposite, that is Tamatea phase. Apai, that's when you get the moon rising around lunchtime. If the sun is setting over Nongataha and the moon is rising on the east, rākau nui. Whiro, the moon, you can't see whiro. The moon and the sun are rising together. But then those are ways you can identify what phase you're in. Another way I identify what phase we're in is looking at the shape of the marama and looking at other tohu of what's happening around us. I just want to reiterate the importance of observation, because that's how you're going to, you won't get anywhere without it. We can feed you mātauranga, but teach you kōrero, but it can only go so fast. Sooner or later you have to practice it. And I believe you can track anything, or you can track any rhythm, whether if the rhythm, you know, ngā tohu o te rangi, ngā tohu o te whenua, tohu o te moana. Also, you can even track the mauri of your whānau, the close ones, seeing where they connect at certain times. I know, you know, you can track your partners. So the tohu are getting more familiar. I know exactly without even looking, what mood she's in. Just by the way she walks around the house and opens and closes the doors and those types of things. But he tohu o te tangata tērā. Tohu o te tangata tērā. Right down to, you know, those of you with tamariki and more than one tamariki. Those of you who can identify without even looking, without even seeing which child it is, can identify by their movements around the whare or their footsteps around the whare. E whakaaro Māori tēnā. And those are ngā tohu o te tangata. So, observing, kore kau he mea tuatu. I was at a Wananga this morning with some of the Scion scientists, and they too improve their science through the same way, observing. But the thing that is missing is that they visual tohu, but what they don't track is te mauri or te wairua. We do. Te ao Māori, we do. We can tell when things are mauri ora, mauri mate or mauri māwiwi just by looking at. Look at our waterways. You can tell by the mauri of the water just by the life that exists within those waterways. He mauri ora. We also know without even going into detail if it's mauri mate or mauri māwiwi. And it's the same with our tangata. Ka te raru nui is that we're not picking up the signs that are just going straight past us all the time. Pedal to the floor, energy focus is elsewhere, mahi or whatnot, because we've been conditioned in that way. But it doesn't have to be the same for our tamariki. It doesn't have to be, if we start normalizing this mātauranga again, like it should be, ka eke ngā tamariki mokopuna. They'll take our mātauranga to where it needs to be. And we've already seen that now. Our tamariki are soaking our mātauranga up like a sponge, with less colonized influence in their hinengaro, and they can connect our wairua nei ki ngā atua Māori instantly. And they already make their decisions based on our maramataka. It's whiro today, they know to keep themselves safe. When they play up, they're no longer blaming their teachers, they're blaming our atua. But hoi anō, just a quick Q&A. If does anybody have any burning questions? I think we'll start wrapping up. Any pātai questions? Lovely.
Have your observations changed over the years since you've been studying the maramataka with climate change and so forth? Have things changed?
My different. I think I started as I was taking observations. My whakaaro was still very rigid, and I was constantly trying to bring in Pākehā whakaaro into our ao, looking for Pākehā answers into our ao. If they make sense, it's this phase, but the he Pākehā, it's a rigid whakaaro. That's changed. Inserting a 13th month helped when I learned from Rangi Mātauranga, if that makes sense, because if you've taken observations on a certain phase, it should be very similar to the next year, if that makes sense. An exact year in that same phase, under the same marama, the observations or the ahu of that time should be the same, roughly. And one time it wasn't, and I was scratching my head. That's because there was a 13th month. So those types of observations, I'm still learning now. Climate change, e kaupapa nui tērā, but I believe if we were still, if our indigenous mātauranga, if this mātauranga was normalised long before we forgot it, we would have saw climate change coming long before climate change came, and it's already here. We would have saw it coming. We would have saw it, and we would have known how to respond to it too. Our tohunga rerea tamakiha and other tohunga in the space from around the world are getting dragged into a whole lot of conversations with leading scientists. Why? Because those leading scientists don't have the answer. Yeah, he kaupapa nui tērā. Rawiri Waititi, of course, doesn't believe our MP, te pōtai o te Wairiki. He believes that climate change will never be tackled without indigenous knowledge. Yeah.
Tēnā koe hoa. Pātai, tuatai nei me hana kia koe mō kōroi tēnei po. Nā i whāngai mai ngā mātauranga, o mātauranga kia mātai te hunga tauiranga, rei tēnā hau e mihana, Pātai, ina hiahia tētahi te ako tonu i tēnei mea te maramataka, mea rato. Ka pai, I tumata tēnei ruarahi, te haramai ki tētahi wānanga maramataka, ngari mai konei, meha rātou, ke haere tonu i nei akoranga. Tēnā koe.
Beautiful question, beautiful question. Observe. Tiro tiro. And take it, thank you, my darling. Take it day by day. And rangi mātā, I say that the marama is the baseline to this. Take observations day by day and link it to the marama. And we've got the Raumi now to help you, to help us. And link it to the marama. Once you link it to the marama, link it to the whetū, see the all whetū. Then you can leave it to the whetū, and then you do the whole whakapapa, to the atua, blah, 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 blah. Do all of that later. But the baseline is the marama. Does that make sense? Then you can season, blah, blah, then you connect it to everything else. Rangi, whenua, you can connect it back. Once you understand the rhythms a bit better, then you can respond to them, know how to respond to them better, and can make predictions. Marama, but as you leave here, observations. We have helpful rauemi if you're here in Aotearoa. You know, my whanaunga Ngāti Rongo, tuki in them, creating rauemi that mean. We have our rauemi ngā pātaka kōrero Aotearoa. If you're from outside Aotearoa, I know Arohe are starting to kick into gear and starting to create a different rauemi. Hei aki, hei awhina i a tātou. Me mihi kā tika kia wiramu, te tohunga wiramu tāwhai ma te maramataka o te whānau wāpanui. Well, people like that that have done that for us, for ngai Māori katoa, our job now would have been a lot harder. But I'm marrying into the whānaus. I've connected it to the whānau, and I'm in there. in there. Learning things. Pātai atu anō. Kia kazi.
Right. Do you think, because I know a lot of businesses and they're adopting when they have their huis, when not to have their huis, when to do the most work, when not to, do you think we'll get to a stage where we'll throw away the 7-day week, Monday to Friday and the weekends?
We already know the system is not serving us. Do you know the system is causing us a whole lot of problems? We know that. Rangi mātā, we never ever thought that we would have a public holiday. But it's happening. We're starting to push back. And he's spearheading this kaupapa for us nationally and influencing the system in that level. And we've been a part of that. Healthy Fat, we've been a part of it at an iwi level. And it's a thanks to all their mahi that we now have a public holiday where the whole nation is going to have to pause and stop to acknowledge mātauranga Māori. And we need to hold the space. Because you know there's corporates out there that are going to try and rob us of our day. We know that's going to come, but we need to hold this place. Ngā Māori mā kia kaha tātou. Kia kaha kia tātou. But we have a public holiday. And I think, you know, our tamariki, our mokopuna, the whole day will achieve that.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. Hoa tu te rākau, hoki te rākau ki taku matua keke, engari he mihi nui kia koutou, he nui te aroha kia koutou, I tai mai nei, te whakarongo I tēnei, ki te pahu kōrero, I tēnei, he whāngai hea I tēnei kaupapa, kia koutou, kia tātou wakuuri, te arawa waka, ngā hau e whā, tēnā koutou, kia ora tātou.